Okay, so 6:30, we're going to call the meeting to order. And this is the October meeting of the Admin Finance Committee for the Township of Edwardsburg Cardinal. And so welcome everyone here. Mr. Robertson sends his regrets, but his knee surgery apparently went well, just needs a little bit more time. So the next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda, and there's a new agenda sitting on your desk. So we're approving the agenda as circulated, but it's the one that's on your desk that we're going to be using, which includes an in-camera session. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the agenda as circulated.
So moved.
Okay, so I have Councillor Cameron moving, and seconded by Councillor Dillabaugh, and it's as circulated. And those in favor?
Aye.
And the motion is carried. All right, now I'm moving then to item number 3, which is disclosure of pecuniary interest. And are there any pecuniary interests here this evening? And what, if so, what's the general nature?
None by me.
So, see none declared. And now I'm going to item 4, which is business arising from the previous Committee of the Whole meeting minutes. And again, there's a new set of minutes on your desk tonight. And that's the minutes we will be looking at. It's the set of work that's on your desk. And if there's any business arising, we'll entertain that now. So does anyone have anything to bring forward as business arising?
Just,
They're coming.
okay, sorry.
Now what's
I've got
this?
it. I've got it.
They're coming.
They're coming.
Oh, I thought they were already circulated.
That was only for close, that's what I was gonna bring up.
Oh, sorry. Okay,
I don't believe I do, Mr. Mayor, but just bear with me.
yes.
No, I didn't.
If you've marked something on your previous set, we can refer back to that number. Now, just to the clerk, does this disturb, this new set of minutes, does it disturb our page numberings? But I see these aren't marked out of 112, so we'll just set
No, I
them.
wouldn't have printed the whole thing again.
Okay, all right. So
Let me
if there's no business arising, I'm gonna move on to delegations and presentations, and we have none here this evening. So then I'll go to item number 6, which is discussion item 6A. And discussion item 6A is the Cormorant Control year-end report of the Cormorant Control Edwardsburg Cardinal 2020. And I just wanted that put on the agenda for discussion purposes for 2 reasons. Number 1, it's just a quick refresher as to what we've done this year. And in the budget this year, I think we allowed $4,000, and that $4,000 has been forwarded to Mr. Courtney. Now, the second issue is, of course, that as of September the 15th, I think it was, it became legal to shoot cormorants from a moving boat on the water. And as you know, Mr. Courtney got his ticket just prior to that becoming into effect, and so he's now got a $600 fine. I've asked the CAO to forward the fine and the documentation and Mr. Courtney's statement to our lawyer, just for his opinion, because with it being so close to the date that, and of course Mr. Courtney's statement makes it very clear that what he was doing was just following the protocol to catch or secure a wounded animal. But anyway, I just want to remind council that that's a hanging issue that we're going to have to deal with sometime once the courts are back in session. And the other thing that I wanted to bring up is that I'm trying to get my oar in early here for the 2021 budget, because I know there are a number of people out shooting cormorants. As a matter of fact, I've talked to several, but there didn't seem to be any requirement in the legislation for the hunters or the shooters to record their numbers. And so I don't know how the government is going to actually track to see whether or not this, this hunting season is having a successful outcome.
Can I ask a question, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, I got you, first I got Councillor Cameron and then you, so Councillor Cameron
Yeah, I
first.
just like the loaded firearm in a boat. Was the $600 fine, and excuse me, but I'm ignorant on this point, but is it not legal for a trapper to have a loaded firearm in a boat?
Well, Mr. Courtney feels that the ticket was wrongly issued, and he's he's been back and forth to the issuing officer several times to have the charge withdrawn. And he's given him a dozen different arguments, that's just one.
Okay, all right, I'll just leave that until we hear back from our lawyer.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's all
I haven't had the new legislation to read it, but the question is if it's open for people in general to shoot cormorants, are they required by the new legislation to pick up the carcass?
Yes.
And dispose of it?
Yes. Is anybody doing it?
Well, that's another issue, but.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
And I've talked to a number of guys, and it's amazing.
Like, if you don't cut a path and you bang him out of the tree somewhere and you've gotta go through, 70 or 80 feet or 100 feet of brush, how many guys are gonna go and do that?
Yeah, but the other situation is where they shoot him in the air
Yeah,
and he lands on the water, and how do you get him?
I don't have a boat or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to speak to, just to, in support of, the good work that Mr. Courtney's done, absolutely, think that his report kind of speaks, very solidly of the good work that he's done, and I wish the province may have followed, sort of our recommendation that they follow along with allowing a trapper to, do the work instead of an open call. So, certainly want to keep Mr. Courtney aboard as well. I have no problem supporting that one. It's good.
Yeah, and just a reminder to council that both Mr. Courtney and I went to Toronto to speak to the minister's staff that were drafting this legislation. And when we presented them with a very comprehensive brief, copy to Mr. Clark, or to Minister Clark, but unfortunately they didn't listen to much of what we gave them, and consequently on the very first day, I think everybody read the story of the chap that was in the tree at Rideau Lakes, an island in Rideau Lakes, all dressed in orange, and he was there to thwart the hunters from shooting the birds in the trees. And that became, of course, frontline news all across the province. But anyway, not to belabor the discussion here, just to make it bring it forward front of mind again. Any other questions before I move on? Okay, so I'm going to move on then to item number 7 on the agenda. And 7A, the first item, is the third quarter building report. And we have Mr. Crawford with us this evening. And we have the report in front of us. And we have Mr. Crawford's briefing note as well. So I think the very first thing is to note that there's, over the last quarter, total construction value for residential construction, which includes renovations, additions, garages, sheds, etc., was $18 million. So that's a pretty successful quarter, I would say. Building permits were issued for 7 agricultural buildings for $961,000. And total construction value to date has risen from $7 million last year to $23 million this year. So I would say so far this year, we're having a very successful year. Congratulations to Mr. Crawford. I know he must be busy to get that many building permits out the door. So the report is now in front of you for questions and discussion. The floor is open. Mr. Crawford, do you want to speak further?
There is a correction that council should know. There was an error on my spreadsheets that I received, and the 18 million is actually $3,837,795. So I don't know where that 13 million came from, but it
So
certainly
sorry,
does
now I've
change
lost
the
you.
report.
I've lost you. Where are you?
On the first paragraph, it says that the last quarter report, construction value for the resident, including renovations, garages and sheds, is $18,393,796. So that's incorrect.
That's what's on the sheet.
Yeah, it's incorrect.
Oh, well, what should the right number be?
So the right number should be $3,837,700, $3,837,795.
No, that doesn't make sense.
Well,
We're just talking the quarter here.
yes,
So July was 628.
pardon me?
July, we're talking residential here.
Yep.
July was 628,495.
Yeah, so August, the 16,740,000 is an incorrect number.
That's
What
the
is the-
incorrect number.
Okay, what's the correct number there?
The correct number is $3,184,000.
Now, that's for August.
Yeah,
Okay, and what is the September number then?
the September number is correct. It's the 1,025,300,
300.
yeah.
Okay, so then in the August number, which is 3,184,000, there are, okay, 5 residences for 1,855,000.
That's correct.
Okay, I see. So where did the 16,740 come from?
I can't tell you, I don't know.
We'll have to follow up with the Excel spreadsheet. There may be a formula error.
Okay, so a formula error on the Excel spreadsheet. That's why I hate Excel.
So through the chair, hopefully by first quarter of 2021, there won't be an Excel spreadsheet, and it'll be generated through the new building software system.
Well, that's a relief to hear, relief words. So, Mr. Crawford, then, what is your Q3 total then,
Q3 total,
under residential?
second here. The Q3 total will be $5,042,995.
900, can't possibly be 995,
No,
could be 795 on the basis of the numbers you read to me a minute ago.
okay, it could be.
Now that distorts the whole sheet.
Yes, it does, so I'm gonna have to reproduce this sheet.
Okay, are there other errors in the sheet?
Well, because of that one error on my report, it changes the last paragraph, which basically says that in 2019, we had $7,097,890 for the third quarter, and the third quarter for 2020 is $9,121,692.
Okay,
Which
that's
is-
quite a difference from 23 million.
Yes,
And so the increase is incorrect as well.
yeah, so the increase is $2,023,802.
23,802.
Yeah,
Building permit fees have also increased. Now, are the building permit fees, are they correct?
yes,
Okay, so in to date, in building fees, in permit fees, we have collected 74,787.40. That's correct number,
Yes,
okay? And the number at the end, over on the right-hand column, for permit fees, 95,344, that's correct.
that's correct.
Ah, okay, all right. So it looks like just the one error in the sheet?
The one error created all those problems,
The project value.
from project values.
Okay, all right. So, any other questions of Mr. Crawford? Anything else you wanted to add, by the way?
I was just going to say that the only, the difference this year in construction values is the fact that this year, we didn't have, very much in industrial, construction. We only had $225,000 worth, I think, as opposed to 4 million and something, 4,500,000.
Yeah.
So that's a significant change,
Is it ever, eh? I wonder what's going on. Well, COVID, mostly, eh?
probably.
Yeah. I know a lot of the guys, the big industrial guys are just busy keeping their plants operating. They're not very much concentrating on capital, that's for sure.
That's true.
Capital projects, yeah.
Yep.
Anybody else have any questions for, I know Mr. Crawford, even though there is an error there, and your total for residential is 5 million, it must have felt like 16 million of work.
For sure, for sure.
So anybody else, any questions here? Okay, if not, we're moving on. So, can we get new sheets then, please?
Yes, I'll have them corrected and emailed to you.
Okay,
Mr. Mayor, just my comment, but I think if you look at the total number of homes, like just the residential side, last year was 20, or 13, and this year we're at 20 already.
Yes.
So we have an increase of 7, and we haven't completed the year. So to me, that represents an interest in our community for people to actually construct new homes.
residents.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because that is a significant increase.
It is, I thought it's almost 30%.
Yeah. Mr. Mayor, yes?
I'm going on that then, so why are the people coming? Is it because we have a good quality of
Well,
life?
I think we have a great community, that's.
Yeah, good quality of life, is it the interest rate's low, is it people coming from
That's why I brought it
outside?
up, I think it's,
Yeah.
it's remarkable in these times especially, that, people would look to a community like ours to either resettle or maybe they've been coming here for a long time, but decided to build, you know?
So I think what I'd like to do is just turn again to Mr. Crawford for a minute, because he speaks to these people. And Mr. Crawford, I'm just wondering if you could give us some anecdotal comments that you've had from people that are constructing new residences. What kind of comments are you hearing from them as to why they have chosen our township? Just anecdotally.
Some of it is because they're moving out of the city. And they're moving, they wanna move into a more rural area. Some of it's people that actually have waterfront property that they wanna develop. And they feel that now's the time to do it. But a lot of it is just people moving out of the city and moving into a more rural environment.
That's, yeah, and they're selecting us for some reason.
That's right.
Well,
Yeah.
why, what? That's what I like to,
Well,
I like to keep
you
getting
and
on.
you and I one day encountered a couple who were building a home on the south side.
From
Well,
Canal.
on Dave's property.
That's right, from Canal,
Yeah.
they're from
And
Canal.
they were retiring, or at least approaching retirement, and they were government employees, I think they worked for the government, and they decided that they wanted to get out of the city, as you say, and they had this opportunity to buy this piece of land, and they were in the middle of construction. And it's progressed pretty adequately in the time between.
And, Mr. Mayor, I found, I think that we're changing this because a lot of our jobs, some of our jobs, you can work at home now.
Yes.
I have one person who moved in there in 44. She's from Woodstock, and she can work online. And they moved from Woodstock to here because it's so much cheaper. That's at the old schoolhouse in Chrysler.
Oh, yes, okay.
Crystal Rock.
Crystal Rock.
Yeah, so, you know, that's an example that I think, I'd like to find out more, if we could find out why, can we expand that?
Yeah.
Put an ad in some of these big,
Keep
well, these
bringing
big
the
cities.
Kool-Aid.
I heard from a real estate agent, he told me people wanna get out of the city
You know,
because of the
Can you
cold.
blame them?
Yeah, no, that's right, they wanna get out, so.
Well, and that's reflected also in the price of resales.
I think there's an economic, there's the biggest part of it. It's a lot cheaper to live out here. People that wanna build houses closer to Ottawa and the Manotick area where it used to be the big area, lots have got so expensive there that they're $100,000 and up for a lot. That you can get pretty near get a waterfront lot out here for $100,000, so it's just economics for most of them, plus the fact I think a lot of them, I know 2 or 3 families that moved here because their kids played hockey, and they had to come out here from Canada to play hockey against the AAA team out here, and all of a sudden they realized that it only took them 35 minutes from the Cardinal Arena to get back to where they were working, where they were driving from 20 minutes from where they were to get to work from where they were. And they bought places out here, like half the price of what they could sell their place in Ottawa in Canada for. So I think they're just realizing, a lot of people don't realize that 40 minutes from Spencerville, you can be sitting in the high-tech
Yes.
industry in Ottawa, and they're starting to come out here as their kids get older and they start playing sports out this way, and they start realizing, gee, it was only 40 minutes to get here to play in the high-tech area, where if we had to play hockey and it takes us an hour to get over from one side of Ottawa to the other when we live in Ottawa, so.
So, Mr. Crawford, just picking up on this a little bit, so your report is up to the end of September, and now we're in the last 3 months, the last quarter of the year. What are the prospects on your desk? Is it looking like the last quarter will be a busy quarter?
It's, well, permits are still steady coming in. Haven't gotten anything major yet, but, I'm still thinking there's gonna be a couple more houses coming in.
You are?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Okay, well, we'll move on then. There's another part to this, Mr. Crawford's report, and that is 7B, which is the vacant and abandoned building report. And Mr. Crawford gives us an update here, and you can see the briefing note. Did you want to speak to the briefing note before I have a few questions, and maybe others do too?
Well, the only thing I can say is that dealing with the vacant and abandoned buildings it's kind of like an ongoing project. You meet people, you talk to them, and you try to get them interested in their property, or you try to find out what their plans are, and you keep working with them. And I find that if you stay on top of them, you get some results, but there's the odd one that I'm gonna have to do a little bit more poking, but the overall, I think the project is working.
Well, can you just tell us, right in your very first paragraph, as stated in the second quarter report, letters were sent to property owners. Can you tell us how many letters went out?
There was 10 that went out the first round.
Oh, so 10. And has there been a second round or a follow-up?
I have, in this report, I've indicated I have an additional 5 that I'm gonna be getting out very shortly.
Okay, 5 coming.
So well, it's an ongoing, like I said, it's ongoing.
Okay, now, just a question from me. One of the tools that's in the bylaw is the requirement of a permit. They have to purchase a permit if their building is gonna remain empty.
Yeah.
So has there been any permits issued?
No.
So they're taking other steps to bring their property up?
There's 2 that are in the process of renovating. There's like mostly repairs, and then there's like I said, in one, house has been totally renovated and sold.
Yes, yes, I'm aware of that one.
And, there's, a couple buildings that have been sold, but I haven't been able to contact the new owners because I haven't found out who they are yet.
Okay,
But those are ones that I'm gonna pursue, because, let's say they're more presence. I mean, they're kind of, something has to be done with those properties.
okay.
And then there's another one I'm trying to encourage to sell. But, I don't know, I'm gonna get much success out of that one, but we'll carry on anyways.
Well, I think if you can just keep encouraging them to do something, and I don't hesitate to be a little bit,
Yeah,
you know, I mean, the bylaw is gonna require enforcement.
that's right.
Counselor?
I just make a comment about this, because I deal with a company in North Grenville that was looking to rent a place to operate their business. And she told me there's 3 places vacant properties in the town of Kempville that the owners want to sell them. They've been sitting vacant for over a year. She's tried to rent all of them. They won't rent them because they, well, they're selling them. Well, she said, why won't you rent? No, I don't want to rent because I want to sell them. Well, she said they sat on them. One's been 2 years sitting vacant, nobody in it. He won't rent it to anybody. He said, well, he hasn't sold it because he's waiting for the price to go up on it. But I think she said, well, I wish North Grenville would have one of these bylaws that they could put pressure on them and say, well, you either rent it or do something with it. She said, I run a business. I can't find a place to operate my business because vacant properties, they won't rent them to me, so.
Yeah.
So she was very, I was encouraged that she thought this was great. She was gonna take it to some of the councillors in North Grenville and say, why don't you have a bylaw like this and give us a chance to get a place to do our business with us, so.
Well, and I think if we have one weakness in our bylaw, I think it's that our permit to maintain an empty is too low. I would like to see it a lot higher to encourage them. Either you've gotta get this place, you gotta get it renovated and rented, or the permit fee is gonna be excessive. But anyway, that's a different issue. We'll deal with that in a year or so. Anybody else questions? Councillor Dilba.
I just
Councillor
have
Dilba, then Councillor Cameron.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Crawford, you said there down at Tuttle Point, you had 2 mobile homes that were moved from their property and stored elsewhere. I wonder if we could change that to 2 RVs? 'Cause I don't think they're mobile homes. I'd like to get that kind of cleared up.
I can change those.
Yeah, I think it's RVs, eh? We'd be looking for.
Well, I think the one's a 5th wheel, but,
Well, that's an RV though,
okay,
not a mobile home. I wanna get that cleared up.
okay.
Especially down there.
I
Thank
can,
you.
change that.
Yeah, good job, well done down there. Thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Cameron.
Yes, just on point number 3, the property owners, you're referring to the village of Cardinal. Would that property be close to where I live?
One of them is,
Okay, now, that one, you realize that falls under a new owner.
pardon me?
I believe there's a new owner.
There is a new owner. I haven't contacted him yet.
That, you've just answered my question,
Yeah.
thank you, that's fine.
I think I know who he is, but I haven't got it
Yeah,
confirmed.
no, I just, you had made mention to that earlier, I was just wanting to clarify that, thank you.
Any other questions on this vacant and abandoned building report? Hearing none, we'll thank Mr. Crawford again, and we're gonna move on. The next one is the 3rd quarter bylaw report, and there is a briefing note here, submitted by Mr. Buffett. Are there any questions with this report? I think the clerk answers those questions. Let's tell you, Councillor Dillabaugh first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wonder if the clerk could help me out. On some of these visits that we're doing some, could we reduce the site visits by maybe asking the people if we could clean up the yards ourselves, the township, and put it on their tax bills? I know we probably tried it, but could we kind of, Like he's got a lot, like 15, 10, 11 visits, and still open. Like maybe after his 5th, just say, look, we're gonna clean it up. And, because we worked on one there, I don't know, that's behind Main Street there, and it worked very good.
Well, it's in the process.
Yeah, but it's working. And I just wonder if we could do something to reduce the site visits, I guess that's what I'm after.
So through the chair, what one are you referring to as 15? I see a number 15 for a number of phone calls for one. Most site visits, I see the max of 5 and 6.
I see 115, 111, and 110,
And then on the previous page, there's more than that.
you see?
On site
For site
visits?
visits, I
Yeah.
don't see 15, I see 15 calls for one.
Okay, work
I'm
order
just looking for-
0165, maybe I'm in.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're absolutely correct on on the first few pages.
I think you're looking at the overall number of work orders in progress?
That's right.
Okay, so those ones have expanded sometimes, just not this quarter. Some of them are
Right.
ongoing.
Yeah, I realize
Some of
that.
them are even before
2 years.
our current bylaw officer's time that we've been tracking.
Mhm.
I don't know exactly what the one that is unless I go into the work order. In a couple of those cases, I'm sure you're familiar with, just based on that number of visits, what one it is.
Mhm.
For those individuals, a lot of times, it is better for our bylaw officer to work with the individual to gain compliance if possible, rather than bring in a cleaning company, which we do on a regular basis. We've been very busy this past summer quarter doing that.
Yeah.
However, in a lot of cases, that kind of breaks the relationship with the property owner and our bylaw officer. They don't always take kindly to that, and having us come in and have a company come in that we hire to clean that could potentially add hundreds of dollars onto that person's property tax. While if we use the compliance measures with our bylaw officer, then it doesn't cost them that amount. Our bylaw officer does 10 hours a week no matter what.
Yes.
It's better for him to build a rapport with that individual, we find. We have had instances where some individuals say, we can't manage this property, yes, please come in and do this for us.
Yeah.
And there's other cases where we just say, no, you're not doing it, you're not complying, and yes, we do that. But it is a process.
Yeah, I'm not saying go in there with the hammer, but I'm saying work with it, but maybe can we cut it, maybe 2 or 3 visits and say, okay, why don't we do it for you?
Sometimes those visits take that amount because the person's not there,
Mhm.
or it's a landlord that we've sent notices to, they're not at that residence. So it does take a couple of tries for our bylaw officer even to track down who is the proper person you need to contact about this issue. A lot of times, he has to calculate that out just to justify him being here. A lot of times, it's him driving by en route to do more than one inspection. It's not
Right.
him driving from our office to Cardinal just to do that trip.
Mhm.
He's doing multiple investigations at once and follow-ups.
Thank you.
Okay, but I think the purpose of the question was, do we offer at an early stage to do the work and charge it back?
Through the chair, if the individual is willing to do that, we have made those arrangements. Like I said, sometimes the individual can't do it for physical reasons
Yeah.
or absent reasons.
Yeah.
And we have made those arrangements. Most of the time, people don't want that, because a lot of times they don't see that there's an issue until we go through all the steps of trying to gain compliance first.
Okay, thanks.
Now, the second part of, I wanted to get the nub of Councillor Dillabaw's question, but a follow-up question. I was approached by a property owner today where we did, after due diligence and due warning, we did show up at the property with police cars and a contractor. I'm under the impression it was a contractor, although the person wasn't sure, to do a cleanup on the property. We were only there for maybe a half an hour or so, and it started to rain, and we left without cleaning up the property, and we've never been back. I don't know what happened there. Do we go back a second time?
Through the chair, that one is a very sensitive matter that I can discuss separately.
Well, I
I
mean,
cannot get into details in regards to a specific case.
no, are we going back? That's the question.
We're contemplating the issue at this point with that specific property.
Well, anyway, I know you're skating here, but the issue remains. Counselor?
Just one question, I know, looking at the clean yard area here, I only see one report on here from Spencerville. I know a couple of months ago, we sent a number of complaints were received, and I believe the bylaw officer sent out some letters and stuff. I believe, are we down, but there's only one complaint left that we're dealing with? All the others been cleared, or?
For the third quarter for Spencerville and Clean Yards, only one was logged. However, we do have ongoing cases through Spencerville that you can note on the page 27 of ongoing work orders that haven't gained compliance yet. But for overall area, we have received fairly positive responses in the area for clean yard compliance issues. A lot of times it's just, he goes, knocks on the door, and the grass is cut. So it's not a,
So he still is traveling around the streets of Spencerville checking on the, still
correct, yeah.
getting a few complaints about a couple of properties that I think there was letters sent to that hadn't been doing much, so.
Through the chair, a couple of them, the ones that you're referring to were dealt with in the second quarter, and a couple of them have carried over into the third quarter overall numbers and progress report. So there are a couple we still need to gain compliance for.
And they're showing on the page 27,
Correct.
lumped in with opens.
Correct.
Does that answer your question, Counselor? Any additional questions with regard to this? Okay, I'm about to move on, and the next one is 7D, which is the third quarter Treasury and Reserve Fund report. Now, just a minute now, am I in the right place? Is that the one called third quarter financial report?
Yes,
7D.
yes it is.
7D,
Yes.
page 30 of 112. So the title on the briefing note is different than the title on the agenda here. So how do I approach this one now? Third quarter financial report, the following reports are attached. Long-term debt schedule as of September the 30th. Reserve and Reserve Fund update. All right, let's handle them in the order in which I see them on my agenda. The first is the long-term debt schedule as of September the 30th, and that's page 32. So we're looking at page 32 right now, and are there any questions with page 32? This is all the long-term debt, right?
Through the chair, actually, the following reports are after the financial report. So there is a report prior to the long-term debt, which is the attached financial report for the third quarter.
Just a minute now, say that again?
So all of the list of reports, the following reports, are the ones that follow after the financial report.
Okay, so
So
the
the first
financial report
report-
is
Page 31.
31,
Yes, that's the very first report that's identified in the information item.
okay?
And then the other reports follow that, they're just attached reports.
Oh,
to
okay, so we're on page 31 of 112 then?
That is correct.
Okay, all right, the assets and liabilities, tangible capital assets and reserve funds. All right, so, what is this telling us? To the treasurer, what is this telling us? Through the chair, through the CAO, to the treasurer, what is this telling us?
Basically, it's telling you the financial position at the end of September in comparison to last quarter as well as to the same quarter in 2019. And as you can see, our assets are actually a lot higher in both in this quarter compared to either one of the previous quarters. Some of the changes, the biggest changes that, with the school board levies, they were delayed till September 30th as an issue date, so they actually haven't been processed through the bank. So that's why our cash balance is a little higher in this quarter compared to last year. Our tax receivables are actually in a slightly better position than last year this time, mainly due to the PAP, the increase in PAPs. We've seen about 20,000 per month increase in that amount. A little bit of change in the inventory, which was the South Street property was sold in August, so the inventory or land for resale has dropped a little bit from June to September. Not much else to really talk about in that specific report.
Okay, so going back to the school board levy payments, what's the order of magnitude there? 2 million?
Yeah,
5 boards, 3 boards?
no, not quite two, just shy of one probably.
Oh, shy of 1?
Yeah,
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, because there's a $5 million difference between September in 2019 and September 2020.
mhm.
And if the school board is only $1 million of that,
Million or
that's,
so, yeah. I'd have to look to see if the county levy has been cash flowed by that time as well, which if that was the case, the county levy is about 800,000, so that would put it closer to the two.
okay. And the liabilities look to be in pretty good shape too.
Mhm.
And the capital assets up just slightly. Any other comments about this that you want to draw our
I have
attention
a
to?
question, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, so I have Councillor Dillabaugh and then to you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just wanted to know the investment on the Rideau St. Lawrence. How come it's so low compared to 219?
Compared to 219, that was just a year-end change, so there was an actual reduction in the overall investment at the year end.
But why is it lower though, that our investment? That's all I'm asking.
It's just a change in the actual equity, so it's an equity change as opposed to, so after 2019, there was a actual slight reduction to the investment. So we get a dividend of 19, but then I believe the investment change was 18, so there's a small change that equated between those two values.
But the
Very
dividend
minor.
shouldn't affect our investment.
No, the dividend doesn't, but we get so you'd have to look at the 2019 financial statements for RSL. If you look at our financial statements, they do give a little schedule on the RSL investments, and it explains that difference that occurred at year end.
So does that change in investment, what triggers the change in investment? There's a schedule, you say?
Yeah, in our financial statements, there's a schedule with RSL's investment, equity and investment, both for the port and for the RSL.
Yeah, the port I can understand because we're still dragging into the port. We're still dragging into the port's investment, the 36 million from the wharf rebuild. We're dragging that in so much a year.
Yeah.
Understand that one, but does the same kind of a thing apply to RSL?
Yeah, our investment in RSL will fluctuate depending on their dividends, so, and we get a
Depending on
percentage.
the dividends.
Depending on whatever their profit or loss is in that particular year.
Oh,
And then, so our equity changes each year,
It's the value of the shares, I guess, isn't it?
yeah, it's based on
If the shares
percentage.
go down.
And it's a very small difference between the
Yeah,
six.
that's not very big.
Oh, okay, so it's
Yeah.
triggered by the share value.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No different than some of your other shares you have.
Yeah, well,
The market, look at the market.
I just want you to know they're all going up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, today.
But
Wait
not
for
as
Friday, they'll.
Okay, good,
Yeah.
Not
good,
as of June 30th, though. They probably were down a lot.
good question, Counselor. I didn't notice that slight difference there, but good question. Okay, so now, does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, now to Mr.
No, I'm not a counselor, but I do have a
Mr. Rath.
question. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just looking at this report as a snapshot, so what I'm trying to get a feel for where we're looking down the tunnel a little bit. Cash position looks pretty good, and I don't know what is gonna hit that, like other than the school board and the other payment that you mentioned. Tax receivable and accounts receivable is about 1.6 million. So my question is, and keeping in mind that we're approaching budget season, what is your best guess as to the outflows of monies from from this time now, like the middle of October, towards the end of the year? Because I'm trying to assess where we're gonna be, say, at the end of the year.
Mhm.
And are we gonna be a positive or negative, et cetera?
So in cash, I can be pretty assured we're going to be in a positive situation. Outflows mainly coming out of the bank between now and the end of the year will be the levies that we have to collect and give back to the counties and the school bars. That'll be the biggest, monies that would be, cash flowed out of the bank.
And what would that roughly be?
So each quarter for the counties is around 800,000.
Right.
And consequently about the same 700,000 to 800,000 for the school boards combined.
Okay, so it's about a little under 2.
So there's another potential 2 coming out, but in that interim, we also do gain, our PAPs are about 165 every month. And quite often, receipts on taxes and other revenues that come in through other means like recreation, we're gonna see more cash flow coming there. We flow all of our water sewer monies in there, so that's about 100,000 every month comes from RSL for Cardinal, and then, all the other systems, we bring money in from there as well. So I would say, we're still gonna be in a really good cash position by the end of the year.
Okay. Now, I have a follow-up question, if I may. Again, it's kind of looking forward to the budget scenario and the cycle that we're going to go through in a couple of months. And I know that a year ago, when the treasurer explained how some of the aspects that are considered when they prepare the forecast or the budget for the following year, that they look back 5 years, I think it was, and start to use some stats from 5 years back. This year has been a topsy-turvy kind of anomaly. So I don't know what problems that'll give you with respect to, historical analysis. But I just think that we have to be careful that we don't go off the rails because of the anomalies that are gonna show up in this year's actuals.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, yeah. It hasn't been a normal year, but while it hasn't been a normal year, I think we've managed to keep things on an even keel.
Oh, yeah, this looks good.
Yeah. I think we did the right things at the right time.
Thanks, Mel.
Yeah.
Well done.
So no further questions with this one. Then I'm gonna go to the following reports that are also attached. And the first is the long-term debt schedule, which is on page 32. And I asked the question, is this all of it? And it is, right? And so you can see that, again, I think this long-term debt is well in hand. What have we got ending this year? Apparently nothing ending this year. The next ending is gonna be January of 22 and March of 22, when the Komatsu, what is it, it's a front-end loader?
Yeah, a little lease.
It comes finished. And then the 2018 Chev Silverado will come due in January of 22. Now, the front-end loader's at 0% and the Silverado's at 3.03. The GMC Sierra is at 0%. And the fire communications equipment is at 2.88%. And it comes due in October 24. Balance owing that right now is 59. There's not much incentive to pay any of these off a little bit early, is there? At these rates.
Number one.
Beg pardon?
The first line there is,
Yeah.
Well, that's the high one, but that's in the debenture, and so that's, you can't touch that one. It's,
and you're locked in.
you're locked in, yeah. So, Royal Bank of Canada, the drains, of course, are paid by the landowners, and there's only 40,000 there. The tile drains are paid by the farmers, and there's only 25 there. And the EMS station, I'm gonna just mention this, the EMS station is at 2.91%, and there's 674,000 there. And what worries me there is there's been a report just received at county council about thinking about a different way of configuring these EMS stations. And I don't think it'll gain any traction, but, and I think, you know, I mean, county council is not gonna welsh on a loan, on a lease like this, so. And the report did not gain a lot of traction at county council, so I don't think it's gonna go anyplace. And then the last one is the Bruce drain loan at 23, so that's just gonna play itself out. Is there no interest rate on that Bruce drain? I guess there isn't.
No.
0%.
0%.
Okay. All right, are any questions here? Hearing none, I'm about to move on. So then next is the reserve and the reserve fund update as of September the 30th. And now we're looking at page 33. Any questions here? I have a bunch, but anybody want to jump in ahead of me? Nobody? So Mel, if you will, because I just need a constant refresher, on the reserve funds, would you just refresh my memory? So on the industrial park land, we've committed to transfer out 23. That was for the Ontario Job Site Challenge?
That is correct.
Okay, and on the Johnstown water wells, we've committed to putting in 5, and the 5 has gone in, right? And the idea there is to try to get to establish that reserve and do away with some of these treatment systems, right? And then on the gas tax, the 215,000, that's come in, and we're not planning to take anything out this year.
No, actually, I'll have to correct you on that. We are actually planning to take money out, 230 or 260 out for road work.
Okay, so we're planning to take out 250 out of that roughly
Yeah,
for road work.
yeah,
That's our paving contract, I think.
that is the paving contract.
Yeah. And then on the Spencerville wastewater, 963, we're planning to take out a lot. Was that a capital project, or has that got to do with the wells?
That was a resolution, and I'd have to go back through, unfortunately, I don't remember the specifics about that 963. I think it might have been, I'm not sure it's with the South
It's such a
Street
small
property.
amount.
Yeah, it was a council resolution back, it was probably even on your last quarter, schedule as well, because it's been on there for a while. It was a council resolution, but I can't specifically remember the amount of, or what it was pertaining to. Whether it was the South Street property or.
Okay, and on the last one, the modernization fund, those are funds that we've committed to, right?
Those are ones we've actually spent this far. There's another further report later on in the same package that shows the amount, that same amount paid, but then there is still committed monies on their modernization.
Okay, so the only big number that we're missing on this sheet right now is the 250 to come out of the gas tax, is that correct?
That is correct, but also our, most of our OCF formula-based funding in that will also go out, because we had planned to spend, well, we've already got some of the money that's coming in. You'll see it in the variance report, that the money that comes for 2020, this is 2019's money that was not spent, so it's just calculating interest. We've been receiving about 6 payments of OCF 2020 payment, and the bulk of that money will go back out to be for capital work in roads as well.
Okay, so
Close to
both the
300,000.
both the in and the out is missing from this one.
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
well, because I'm not actually putting the 2020 payments into the reserve fund. I'm just receiving them in to pay for projects currently. It's not going into this reserve fund. The only time we have to put it into a reserve fund is if we don't spend it, but we've basically spent it in 2020 with our roads projects.
Oh, okay, so it's just held in the operating account, expenses are paid from the operating
Yeah.
account, and the net difference goes in here?
Into a reserve, yeah.
Okay, all right. And then I have one last question. This is for the CAO, and it's my favorite question. When we do our gas tax projects, and we all know that,
I know where you're going, you're gonna ask about signage.
you anticipated the question. Is our signage up? Giving full credit to the source of the gas tax?
I can't confirm that. I have a feeling that it is not up yet.
Okay, well, since you can't confirm it, I think your feeling is probably correct. Could we look into that? I tell you, I really, I regard that as a sort of a moral obligation on our part to get those signs up. AMO fought hard to get that treatment the way we get it. We're the only province in Canada where the feds flow their gas tax money to AMO, and AMO distributes it to the municipality. It doesn't go through the hands of the province. AMO fought hard for that, and one of the conditions is that there be signage on all of the projects, so I'd ask you to please look into that.
It's only fair and right to do so.
Thank you very much. Okay, so now I'm moving on from the reserve and the reserve fund update to the capital status report as of September the 30th. And that is page 34. And very interesting. Did you want to speak to this, Mr. Grant? Or are you going to have the treasurer, or up to you?
I can certainly have the treasurer start,
Sure.
and then I can follow
Fill
up
in.
with other,
Yeah.
if there's any questions.
So I circulate this particular spreadsheet to senior management to help me complete it. So a lot of the comments and such are as a result of the individual department manager. But for the most part, a lot of our projects, bigger projects have been completed. Some within budget, some not within budget, unfortunately. We have got a lot completed and are still waiting for invoicing, which is always seeming to be a bit problematic, because that causes us a little issue with cash flow, but not horrible. I don't know if there's anything specific that I can outline, but.
So, a couple of questions, if I could, please. So, I just wanted to just go to the fire department for a minute. So, the Station 2 drawings and the cost estimates, the value of the tender was $15,000. It was completed in May, and it looks like we've expended the $15,711.
Yeah.
Now, so we have that report, have we not? Is that? I'm just trying to remember if that report's been circulated to council.
Yeah, through the chair, yes, those were the drawings and cost estimates, and that report was presented to council, and the direction was to move forward with those additional
Okay,
studies.
so we saw the drawings?
You would have, yes, I'm almost positive they would have come forward to committee.
Okay, but they're available if we can't remember what they look like.
They would be available, yes.
Okay, then on the basis of that, we authorized the additional studies, which I think was the geotech and that kind of thing.
Yes, the topographical, the geotech, yes.
Okay, so those are in the works. Scope of work documents received from CKA, and the engineering in the survey is in progress, and seeking quotes for studies. So that there's no dollars associated. Well,
Yeah.
there doesn't seem. Well, that's the 4,800 for the geotech,
Yeah.
and it's in progress. So what about the other ones? Sorry, that's the topo. the technical and the environmental assessment study, that's just looking for quotes.
Correct.
Okay, and we don't have any,
So we don't have that dollar value yet, but once the quotes are received and the vendor selected, then we'll be able to have that value inserted.
okay? Now, the replacement rescue truck is $338. We're expecting delivery in late September. Any update on that?
It will be at least late October.
Okay, delayed. Replace the cutter, that's done, it's in service, and looks like we've expended.
Correct.
Public Works, it looks like gravel tender, 90% complete, 10% patchwork left. What's that mean?
So there's a small portion that's left for patchwork that may come up in the fall, where we need to apply to a small section of the gravel road.
Okay. Now, Ventnor Bridge, project on hold until after final tax billing. What was the connection between putting it on hold until the final tax bill?
That was one of the projects that we put until we knew the cash flow position.
Oh, okay. So is it gonna go ahead then, Ventnor Bridge?
I will need to confirm that. I don't have confirmation on that. I will have to follow up.
Has it been tendered out? Cause there's no tender price.
I am going to say that it has not been tendered out as of right now.
Okay, now the Riley Street retaining wall, there's no price beside that, and yet I think the work has pretty much been done. Was it not tendered out?
It was tendered out and awarded to Bush Construction.
But there's no tender price.
That is noted. Something tells me it's around the $30,000 mark, but I'll.
Okay, so that's a missing,
That is a missing value that's,
okay, and waiting invoicing, so we don't have the final invoicing yet.
we do not,
But we put a budget of 27.5 in our budget.
yes.
Okay, there's another couple here. The one that interests me is the Spencerville wastewater lagoon splinter box. Now, the tender came in at $22,481. It was awarded to Aqua Drain. Why is the contractor rescheduling to spring of 2021?
So through the chair, if you recall, we had presented last month some budget adjustments with respect to the Spencerville wastewater due to the fact that we had to do some more urgent repairs at pumping station number 1.
Right.
And some additional camera work.
Right.
So what we were able to do is negotiate for them to maintain their price into 2021 and delay that project so that we're not, so that we'll be able to cover the pumping station number 1 work.
Okay, and I remember all of that, but we rescheduled it, not the contractor, or rescheduled at our request, I guess.
I'm going to say it was mutual. They
Yeah.
had a number of work projects
Yeah.
that came up.
Yeah.
And they were only going to be able to do that, we'll say in this time frame right now in October, in the wet season, which is not a time that we want the splitter box, partly out. So yes, fair enough with the wording, but it was more of a joint delay or pushback.
Okay, so then, through the CAO to the treasurer, that 28,000 that's in our budget for 2020, we're basically going to use those dollars to handle those 2 repairs that we talked about. So we will not be whipping that 28,000 forward,
That's correct.
That's correct.
right?
That
We
is
will
correct.
reschedule that.
Reschedule it in 21.
Okay,
Correct.
fair enough. Any other questions here? I don't let me do all the talking here, fellas, gentlemen.
You're doing a fine job,
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, I know, but it's not just my
Well,
job.
I have one question, and it goes back to the public works side, and it's to do with the road work, the cocoa paving stuff, right? And in all cases, well, we deferred one project, but in other cases, the budgets were overrun, the quotes were higher than the budget that we had set aside. And so, I guess what I would wonder is if we had awarded to a different company, would the actual expenditure for each of those projects exceeded what we paid Coco? Like, in other words, they won the work because they were, historically, we've been using them, but also because their bid was competitive. Had they quoted the prices that we ended up paying, would they still have been competitive, I guess is the question I'm asking.
Well, we paid them more than they quoted?
Correct.
Oh, yeah,
Correct.
big time.
So, I guess to answer that, it is, the quote submissions are based on estimated quantities.
I don't know.
So those, if there were more quantities used.
Well, there's add-ons and
That's
stuff,
right, that's right, so.
and you have an approval process, like they just don't have a blanket.
That is correct.
Yeah.
That is correct.
So when you look at that though, is it safe to assume that the other companies would have had similar add-ons?
I would.
Like, in other words, was it something that we've sort of forgot in our tender, in our request, and that they picked up and had to do, or was it something that, you know, was an act of God, if you like, that we ended up, you know, having to rectify as we were doing the work?
Well, quantity estimates can be out.
Yes, so I would say a combination of quantity estimates and a few other factors that,
So
When-
you use
when-
60 tons of gravel instead of 40 tons of gravel or whatever. So who would you, like, I'm gonna really push on this, okay? Because this is critical in my
so,
view
yeah.
to managing contracts. Who makes the original estimate? The township?
So the township would have, yes, the township would have provided the quantity estimates, correct,
In the tender document,
in the tender documents.
prepared by,
By a consulting engineer.
Prepared by senior management.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but you might have a consultant.
Correct.
Yeah. So the question is then, if we're consistently off on that kind of thing, then we have to set in motion correction parameters. Okay, because you can't keep doing this year after year after year. You know, these
Correct.
contracts have to come in, they have to come in relatively close. Obviously, an estimate is always 100% not gonna be met. It's either gonna be under a little bit or over a little bit or whatever. But we have seen the history of shortages, shortfalls. And as a taxpayer representative, I think that's very dangerous. Because what happens is we don't know what the problem is. We can say, well, we're underestimating the pieces and parts, but, you know, and the contractors, they get complacent and comfortable if they know they're getting the work, or at least feel they're getting the work. And then the process of add-ons can be also manipulated. Like, I've been in that business, okay, so I know how it's done and some of the games that get played. So I just think that as a beneficial aspect for the residents and taxpayers of our community, we gotta get a handle on this.
okay, so I'm gonna just.
So if I may, go ahead, sorry.
So I'm not being critical of one person or one group, because I don't have any data. But the concept of constantly paying more, paying more, paying more.
No, I think
That has
that's,
to be dealt with, I believe.
yeah, but let's see if we can get to the nub of it. When the engineers or whoever prepares the tender document and estimates quantities, and the final quantity comes in higher than estimated, who's responsible, or what is the accountability factor?
So with respect, the payment is based on actual quantities.
Yep.
So if we underestimated the quantities and more quantity was used, we're on the hook to pay that difference.
Okay, so why did we miss our estimate?
Why did we miss our estimate?
That's generally poor engineering.
Well, with respect to that project, if you recall, when we originally started the project, the estimates come in high. If you recall, I think we were about $200 or some $1,000 over. The scope of that work was reduced. Unfortunately, that scope of work was reduced to what our budget estimate was, but that budget estimate not only included the paving contract, but also some in-house material and some signage and other items that were not captured with that reduction of scope.
Okay, so that all comes down to contract administration.
And as I indicated from the start of this, I take full responsibility. I don't think, though it's fair to certainly say that this is a trend, with all due respect. I think if you look back 5 to 7 years, the majority of these contracts have come in pretty close, if not under. So yes, we had a stretch last year, and as I've indicated before, I'm not overly pleased with the result of this project this year. There is a report coming to Public Works, Environmental Services and Facilities next week with respect to this project and some of the measures that we're taking to make up that difference.
Okay, so to get to the nub of Mr. Bradley's question, and I'm not trying to put words in his mouth, the point is that, number one, senior staff is aware of the fact that there's some concern at the governance level that the reason for the overages is one of the reasons for the overages is inaccurate estimates. That's one of the reasons. Just one. And other things missing. Contract administration, really.
So definitely at the senior management level, we need to reevaluate how we're doing our estimates.
Okay. Councillor Hunter wants to hear.
When the contract, sorry, just one last point. When the contracts are being executed, do you have enough staff that you can do like actual work, contract work administration during the process of the actual work being done? You know, like companies that do this kind of work on a regular basis, like Bell Canada and the highways departments and so on, they have contract inspectors that tend to go out and
They're right on the job.
right on the job, some of them are on there permanently, but
Correct.
in many cases, it's a contract inspector who goes out 2-3 times a week, maybe, just to talk to see the progress, talk to the foreman or the supervisor of the project and so on, make sure things are all kind of tickety-boo going along, right?
Do we appoint contract administrators?
We do on occasion.
Did we on this paving job?
I would say that, no, we did not, we did not have we did not hire a specific contract admin person.
But you could
Councillor
do
Hunter,
that.
Councillor Hunter wanted in.
You could do that, could you not? Like if you had a big contract and say, well.
Yeah.
Yes, we would certainly incorporate that into the budget estimate and
Fair enough.
what the wages would be.
Well, I think there's a couple of points here that has to be looked at. One is in the area of Edgeworth Cardinal, when we put out a road contract, we basically have 3 companies that's gonna bid it. They're all located in different geographical areas that they're operating from. We've got a 10 square mile township here, and when we have half our jobs at one end of the township and half the jobs at the other end of the township, we're putting them all in one bid here. We're gonna get a lot better bid if we split that into separate contracts. When you get a 10-mile difference in haulage areas for different contracts, there's a big advantage in those contracts. Somebody's hauling half the job at a short haul, and the other ones are all bidding on a long haul of that job. There's gonna be a big variation in that price. We're getting a blended price. We're not getting the best price. When you're bidding at Johnstown, I'll take for granted, we had a lot of work in Cardinal this year. There's no way anybody was gonna underbid Coca on that job, because they're hauling the shortest haul to it. But when we did the Ventnor Road, Grants was a way shorter haul. They were just hauling from Kempful. Tackleberry was in between, because they were next to nothing haul for gravel. They had a longer haul for pavement, but pavement was a lower division of the thing. So I think we really gotta look at splitting where these contracts are. If they're all in one spot, we're doing 3 roads in the south end of the township, okay, it's fair game, we've just gotta work with it. But when you're working in south and north, that contract should be 2 separate contracts, too. Then we're gonna get a better price.
Okay, I see your point, and whereas before, we've been looking at it from the other point of view, that if we put them all together in one contract, we'll get a better bid price on a bigger contract. But when we do that, we miss the effect of haulage, the
Just respect
distance.
to haulage, and really for the amount of work we're doing,
Yeah,
it's not a big job for anyone.
okay.
It's not a great job for them. We're small peanuts
Yep.
in it. The counties are the boys that are
Yep.
laying the big money up. The highways are the boys that are laying the big money up. We're just filling
Yep.
jobs, and sometimes you're gonna get a better price if it is a smaller job, because if they've got a week in between doing 2 county jobs, and we got a road sitting in between there, maybe they give you a real good price on it, because their paper's gonna be there, and if that road's not gonna be ready for a week, and they can get this road ready.
Yeah.
So-
They don't know that when they're bidding.
And another thing, when we're doing these jobs, before we put these contracts out, we need to, our management, and not criticizing any of them, but we need to do a better research. We need to do some call-outs before you put contracts out to contractors to find out what do you estimate your prices are gonna be this year. They're gonna tell you what they're not gonna tell you what they're gonna bid, but they're gonna tell you our asphalt prices are up 10%, our gravel's going up 8%. You can figure that into your bid. If you know what you got last year, and they're all, the contractors, you call all of them, they're gonna tell you roughly how much their percentages are going up. Then you got something to work with. That's why we got burnt so bad this year. We way underestimated what the value of asphalt was this year. We underestimated what the value of gravel was this year on it, and all the prices went up about the same across the contractors. They all went up, gravel went up about 8%, asphalt went up about 15%. We didn't work that into our estimates.
Okay, so, but
Wasn't enough research.
nevertheless, remember though, that what we're talking about here, and the gist of this conversation was not the cost compared to the estimates. What we're talking about here is the final cost compared to the bid.
Yeah.
That's where we're upset.
But all
The
these-
bid is X, and we're paying X plus Y. So that's got nothing to do with estimates. You know, I mean, there's 2 different aspects to it. Yes, there's the budget estimates, and we had to change the scope of the project. But nevertheless, when the project comes in at budget X, and we pay X plus Y, that's got to do with administration
Yeah, but that-
and
why-
supervision.
Why did we pay X plus Y? Because we added work to it.
Well, yes, but then we should be seeing change orders. I mean, we give a 10% leeway for contingencies. And, you know, I'm gonna tell you, this is one of the only places that I've seen where we give 10% contingencies, and that contingency is at the sole discretion of our manager in the field, because other projects that I've been involved in, every penny that came out of that contingency came in the form of a change order, and the change order had to be approved at the table. So, I mean, I don't, you know, when the contingency is $10,000, I don't have a problem giving authority to spend $10,000 to the guy in the field. But when the contingency is $100,000 and it's all getting used, well, that's a different story. So anyway, I think what we have to take out of this conversation is that senior management knows where we're coming from here, and this is 2020 was the sort of second year that we've been in this position. Let's see, and you know, we have a due diligence responsibility at budget time too, so let's see how we work out let's not overguess ourselves, let's see how things work out in the next year. And just so you know, I mean, we've experienced exactly the same thing that Councillor Hunter was talking about at county, where the pricing, the unit pricings came in much higher than our estimates. That meant that the tender costs came in much higher than our estimates, and some projects had to be canceled or rescheduled. Now, as far as actual administration of a contract, once the tender is signed, we assign, county always assigns somebody to be responsible for the administration of that contract on a day-to-day basis. Generally visits the job sites almost on a daily basis, always. So, something to think about. Okay.
Councillor Hunter mentions that the price of asphalt goes up. Now, one would ask, why is the price of asphalt going up?
Can't ask that question.
No, but you gotta think about it, like oil's at one of the lowest levels it's ever been at, okay?
Yeah.
And electricity is under control.
Yeah.
What the hell's causing the price to go up?
Well, I'll tell you one thing that's causing the price to go up, and there's no question about it. The asphalt cement that is used to hold the stuff together, the specifications for that asphalt cement have been so bad in, say, the 5 years previous, that the companies have been forced to re-engineer and redesign their cements. And those cements are lasting much better now, last year's and this year's.
Yes,
Well, this year we don't know yet, but
We have the carbon tax added in on it too.
yes,
That forced the price of it up,
yeah. At several different levels.
yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna go on here. That's a good report, a good discussion. And the last one that's here is Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing allocations as of September the 30th. This is the modernization fund, and I think this is on page 35 of 112. Somebody else, please. I'm busy here with something else. I'm lost. Questions with this modernization funding? Anybody?
Looks like we still got a fair amount of money there.
Yep.
If I
Go ahead,
may.
Counselor.
Yes, at the bottom of the page, there's a $76,000 and $455,000. I think I asked these same questions last time. What are those two figures?
So the
Through the chair too.
through the chair, the 76 is the total of the year-to-date spent.
Okay,
And if you take the 532 minus what's been spent, that's the 455.
okay,
If you take the 82,211 off
yes,
of the 455, then that leaves the 373.
okay.
But I will try to put some
Yeah.
wording around those columns so that you can,
Okay, so
be clear.
basically then what we have about $375,000 that has not been spent, is that correct?
Correct, and this particular amount of money is set aside into a reserve fund, and it
Yes.
typically earns around $1,100 to $1,200 monthly. It'll go less as we spend it, of course, but, so there's certainly between now and the end of the year, if we don't spend the 373, could be a little bit more than that.
Yes, okay. And one other question, do we have any outstanding invoices that you're aware of?
I think that there's been some more since the September 30th have gone through the system, but I don't know specifically. It would be anything that's already remained committed,
Okay,
so it won't change the 373.
okay, thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Anyone else here? Okay, so to the CAO, now this money came to us in 2019, and it looks like April of 2019, 584,000. And I think we've been using it very wisely as preparing ourselves to be more efficient in the future. Has staff, senior staff, spent some time in thinking of other ways to utilize this money that we've been challenged to use to prepare ourselves for the future?
So through the chair, senior management is always in conversation, looking at ideas and concepts, but certainly want to try to work through to ensure that when the money is spent, it's going to be of value, not just now, but moving forward. So we don't have anything like immediately on the radar that we'll be bringing forward, but certainly we're always on the to look to refine and improve.
Okay. Challenge you to be creative. Okay, and no further questions, I'm about to move on here. And so moving on, I'm at now, where am I?
It's 7E.
7E, the third quarter budget variance report. And nice report here. Does anybody have any questions with this question? I believe we're on page 38 and 39.
86.
36?
Oh,
Yeah.
well, I'm gonna
36.
look at it, yeah.
You ready?
I have,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
no, I have nothing to say.
Oh, you have nothing, okay. Anybody else? Nobody?
Looks good.
Shame to see the staff preparing these reports, nobody's got any questions.
It's because they do such a good job.
Good.
Well, I know, but there's always,
They're breathing easier right now, Mr. Mayor.
okay.
Through the chair, would be nice to hear a couple of comments. We took a little bit of a beating on the reserve fund.
Well, I thought you got off pretty light.
Good report.
Okay, all right, well, if there's no questions, I've got a dozen answered here, a dozen, but I'm not gonna pursue them. I'll pass on mine. And I'll go then and skip to 7F, which is internal controls, accounts payable procedures. And there's a, am I right, is there a recommendation here? Or is this just information through the CAO, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair, this is just information, just an internal, formalized internal control procedure for accounts payable with respect to EFTs, just so that committee and council is aware of the process and the safeguards that are in place.
This is electronic funds transfer, right?
Yes.
Okay, any questions with regard to any of this? Hearing none, about to move on. Meeting recording, policy update, and I'm at 7G. And I think this is Councillor Hunter's motion coming forward. Recommendation here in front of me. Discussion if any. If not, I'm looking for a mover. Counselor Hunter, you brought this forward, you wanna move it?
Yes, I do.
And Deputy Mayor Deschamps is seconding. Further discussion here? If any? Hearing none. Vote to
Well,
call it.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, I was a little slow off the mark there. If the recommendation goes through and then it's passed by council, when will the recording start, at the next meeting or in the new year?
Through the chair will begin at the November CDC meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, vote to call the question. Those in favor? Motion is carried. And, I did have a question, maybe you can help me with it. And that's on page 57 of 112. Meetings that take place outside of council chambers are not subject to this policy. Now, that means that the meeting that we held upstairs, CDC meeting that we held upstairs, wouldn't be taped. Is there any way, can we not adapt our system so that we can tape outside the council chambers?
So through the chair, we originally put that in place when we implemented this policy, just for fear that there was technical difficulties and some public member didn't come back to us claiming that we intentionally did something and prevented it from being published or recorded.
Right?
It does not, the policy does not specifically prevent a member of staff from taking this to another location. Due to the circumstances we're in, we're more than capable of accommodating.
Oh, okay, all right. So this just doesn't obligate us to it?
Correct.
Okay, so can we expect that as a normal course of procedure, we'll attempt it?
Yes, we
Oh.
have since the beginning of moving the committee and council meetings around, specifically when we were in the Cardinal Ingredient Center.
Okay,
And it worked? Good.
okay. All right, and moving on one more time, marriage license and ceremony fee updates. I'm at 7H. And let me have a look. Yes, there is a recommendation here. Discussion? If no discussion, chair's looking for a mover to move the recommendation.
So moved.
I have Councillor Cameron moving.
I'll second it.
But I do have a question, actually, it's just a comment,
Okay.
Mr. Mayor. And
Go
that-
ahead.
And that is, by reading through this, I was very, very surprised that whoever was officiating the marriages, so to speak, was not paid a salary, or classified as, if it's a service of the township that's performing, I would have expected that there would have been a dollar and cent factor in there as well. But anyway, it appears that it wasn't, so I'll leave it at that.
Well, maybe you can explain.
So through the chair, there's two different services. The ones that are being provided during regular business hours.
Yes.
The officiant, whether it be the clerk, deputy clerk, or designate, that person is working during the regular business hours, so we're getting paid at our regular salary.
Correct.
However, if we're going outside of our regular business hours, outside of when we're being paid by the township, we're doing this based on $150. That's why a review was completed, a chart was formed that indicated that we were only getting a partial payment. So that's why I made the recommendation to change that amount.
Yes, and as I pointed out, I moved the recommendation, but I was still surprised that you did some work for the township, we'll say on a Saturday or whatever the case might be, and you were not recompensed as your salary would dictate. Anyway, that was a surprise to me. So that's been rectified now.
Okay, I have a mover and a seconder. About to call the question on this recommendation. Those in favor? Motion is carried. And so now I'm moving on to item I, 7I, electronic participation. 7I, we have to find it. And I think, is there a recommendation here? Yes. It recommends, the committee recommends the council adopts the updated procedural bylaw to permit electronic participation as attached. So, discussion if any? If not, a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Cameron.
Yes, I'm most glad that we are not looking at the proxy voting at this point in time. That is fine, but other than that, Mr. Mayor, I support the recommendation.
Okay, looking for, Deputy Mayor?
Oh, no, I want to comment. I have no problem with video participation as a means to participate when, and only when, there's a circumstance beyond one's control or an emergency situation like a pandemic. But creating a council that meets only virtually, if this gives that the ability to do that for future councils, I strongly oppose that. I think that meetings are meant to be held in person when possible. And I understand where this came from the province for a pandemic reasoning, but and I know that this can be done for 1 year, which for the rest of the next year I have no issue with either. But as a long term, to think that I never came to Spencerville and all my meetings were held from the kitchen table, if that was the possibility, and that this is setting us up for a council that doesn't actually meet, I have a strong issue with that. So, maybe I'm wrong in my interpretation of the way I'm reading it, and maybe it doesn't mean that, but in my mind, that's what it allows the general nature of it to be manipulated that way.
Okay, so now we come down to the philosophy of it. I know exactly where you're coming from, just went through the same discussion in county. So now we're faced with exactly the issue that you've brought forward. Do we allow electronic participation to continue and change our procedural bylaw to permit it? Yes or no?
No.
And if the answer is no, then we don't change our procedural bylaw. And if the answer is yes, then we have to make changes to our procedural bylaw. It all comes down to where's your head and where's your philosophy. I got one speaker and then another. You've raised a good issue. You're first.
Mr. Mayor, I had exactly the same feeling as Deputy Mayor. However, reading through the briefing notes a couple of times, I think the intent is very clear here. That the intent is that if you're in, I'll use the word dire straits, or in a serious medical issue or a serious weather-related issue, the intent is to be here. And I think I'm satisfied with it as it stands, but maybe to be more clear that it the intent is stressed a little heavier.
And Mr. Bradley.
Well, the only comment I would make is that, and we see this before our council right now, but it's also before all kinds of other councils. If you watch the proceedings today on TV, there was all kinds of virtual stuff going on with the Senate in the US, okay? So everybody's dealing with this kind of issue during this time. The question I have is, can we not put a fence, like, if we amend the procedural bylaw, can we not put a fence around that portion of it that stipulates how and when that procedure can be applied?
Well, I'm gonna ask the staff if they've attempted to do that. Just, first of all, I know someplace in here we deal with intent.
Yeah, it's on page,
Where's that come in?
it's on page 68, right about, there's about 5 or 6 bullet points. Well, the paragraph starts, well, every effort should be made for members to attend physically in person. However, due to various circumstances, and if any one of us sitting at this table right now had an emergency and had to go to, we'll say, the States, immediately when they come back, they quarantine themselves for 2 weeks. So that is the medical end of it. It also addresses travel on official business. It covers, like I said, this is the 6 points, and I think the intent is extremely clear that you should be here.
Okay, so there's the 6 points that would be sort of, we would work those 6 points into the bylaw, right? Okay, Deputy Mayor wants it.
While I respect what Councillor Cameron says, that's great, but he also uses the analogy of self-isolation and during a pandemic, which is, we're making this, like, the way that I'm reading this isn't just during the pandemic, it's long term.
No, you're absolutely correct.
And so,
That was
while
just
I
an
respect
example.
what you did, that's what the original bill did,
Yes.
and they replaced it, right? So, you know, Bill 187, you know, Municipal Emergency Act amended the Municipal Act. Like, the original intent, what they did originally was fine by me. I think, you know, during the pandemic, but only provided such authority during a declared emergency. I strongly sit on that one. I just think we're opening a can of worms for people to not show up and participate at the council table.
Well, there may be other reasons, other than health reasons why you can't. I mean, it could be in a situation of an apprehended insurrection, for example.
Well,
Or all kinds of weird things can happen. Mississauga had a train wreck a few years ago with chemicals all over the place. They had to basically tell everybody to stay home. So there's all kinds of situations that would prevent a scheduled meeting from taking place. And so I don't know.
that was in
Okay,
1986.
Councillor Hunter wants, getting a good discussion going here, Councillor Hunter wants in.
Well, you know, like yourself, Mr. Mayor, have been around the council table spread over a couple of decades or more here, and yes, there's sometimes something happens, the meeting has to be canceled because we haven't got a quorum, but there's been very few times I can remember of any that just because it was canceled, that it had really affected anything, that it wasn't rescheduled a week later or 4 or 5 days later, whenever enough quorum could be held to be there. And I know, I'll give an example, the school board here allows them to take part on an electronic basis. And we've got some members there, I don't know if they've ever sat in on a meeting at the school board. They do it from home all the time. And I'm like our deputy mayor, I don't wanna see that happen. You have a lot more face-to-face discussion and stuff than you do over Zoom or whatever you wanna be working on. Plus, there's some things that are being done in camera, and I have no faith in electronics of being secure enough to do in-camera sessions over the internet, so
So, the way you're talking, I
I'm not in
think
favor of it.
you're not in favor of it, okay, that's good, we finally got it out. And I know you want back in again, but I haven't heard from Councillor Dillawa.
Well, I'm like Mr. Bradley, can't we build that fence
Sure we can.
around, you know, like what we have here, like a good example of what happened in Mississauga, I mean.
And I think Councillor Hunter is saying, why build a fence if you don't need to?
Well, I think we should build a fence.
Well, okay, let's go on, this is gonna be interesting. But we're not gonna talk forever, and Councillor Cameron,
Well,
We can.
Mr. Mayor, the electronic situation is just it's not gonna get any worse. It's gonna get, if anything, it's gonna get better. We're gonna have equipment that's going to allow us to virtually do whatever, to do exactly what Councillor Hunter and Deputy Mayor Deschamps is concerned about. However, all we have to do is put a fence on it, and somewhere along the line, just, there better be a darn good reason why you can't make the meeting.
How do you enforce it?
No,
Well, there's
no,
good, well,
don't we review the procedural bylaw
Every term.
term?
every term.
Yes, but the slippery slope that the deputy is referring to is that, and this was my words at county council, I think I was the only one at county council that opposed it, and I did oppose it, the thing. My worry is not the guys around this table, it's the guys that could be here next
4 years
term.
from now, yeah.
And I keep thinking about the question of allowing an individual to participate in an in-camera session from his home. And I keep thinking of that mess that went on in Leeds and the Thousand Islands, where we had a counselor who had no more scruples than to leave an in-camera session and go out and blab to everybody what happened. That means that if he was at an in-camera session, he could have all his friends in the room with him,
Yeah.
listening to this
Yeah,
session,
very good point.
same individual.
Yeah.
So,
Extremely
Counselor,
good
you want it back in again?
Yeah, and it's, again, just to, I mean, thanks, Steve, Counselor.
It's a
Yeah, I just think that there's a lot of, today there's a lot of keyboard activism, and a lot of people that like to type and don't like to show up. And to me, part of this job requires showing up. It doesn't require sitting at home in front of your keyboard typing away. It requires you to come here, have good lively discussions, make a commitment to your community, show up and have a lively debate. I agree that circumstances may come up, that maybe you're away, maybe you can't come up. We've all encountered those, I think, already where we've had to miss a meeting. But I don't think that the rest of the good group at the council table will miss me for a meeting if I'm not able to contribute, so.
Mr. Mayor.
Now, you two fellas are on opposite side of this spectrum.
I think we're very close to being together. I totally agree with Deputy Mayor Deschamps, but I just want to take you back a little bit in history here. Back in the early 2000s, we had a councillor from the village of Cardinal who was very ill, and he missed probably 60% of the meetings through a term. Very, very, very ill. And here we are in a situation where we only have one now, not two people from each ward, we only have one from each ward, and if that had been 5 at that particular time, the village of Cardinal would have been totally unrepresented if he couldn't do this. Okay? I think we've gotta have, somebody has to, and I think it's a staff job in one way, to make sure this is policed properly, and if someone is ill, there better be a darn good reason for it. And
Yes,
I
but-
think it's gotta be brought to council.
It's not the staff's job to hold the elected officials accountable for how they do their business.
It is,
You know,
it's
it
a
really is.
procedural bylaw.
Well, no, I mean theoretically, it's council that holds councilors responsible.
And, okay, and that's fine.
And we've had other councillors that, as you know, missed a lot of meetings that didn't really give much excuse why they weren't here.
That's right, that's right. So, I mean, this is a philosophical argument, and it goes right to the heart of what democracy is all about, right to the essence of it. And the thing is, and you know, as the deputy mayor says, it's a crack in the door. Another councillor, we make this, another council of people that are not quite so conscientious can spend their whole term on Zoom.
Not if we build the fence.
I don't know how you stop it. I don't know how you stop it.
So, well, I 100% agree, I mean, that's exactly what I agree. COVID's not going away over the next 6 months, so using the tool that's provided for us for a year, I have no issue with that, while the pandemic's on, I'm just,
Well,
it's
just
more of a
hang on,
declared
you're-
emergency for me.
Well, you're saying that we can use Zoom right now. We
I don't
can't,
think we can anymore.
No.
We
No, we
could,
can't.
we could before, I don't think we can.
No.
I don't think we
No.
can now.
We could when the emergency.
But we
order
could when
was
the
on.
order was on.
yeah, but the order's off now.
Yeah, so if I may, I believe it was July 24th?
Correct.
That,
Yeah, 20th,
that the province terminated
Yeah.
the declared emergency.
That's right, so
So
the,
from that time till now, you are,
Yeah.
unless your procedural bylaw has changed,
unless your procedural
Right.
bylaws.
there's no more Zoom meetings.
Right.
Yeah. And that's the situation that we're having at county. But, you know, one thing that I take a lot of pride in is the fact that our council has never missed a meeting. We've always had a majority here at their desk. And I think that's something we should be proud of. Okay,
Well,
so,
in fairness, I contributed to one meeting, one port meeting, via Zoom. Because I had, you know, Charles at home with me that night and couldn't make it. And the one thing that I took away from that meeting was that I honestly
You're
did
left
not,
out.
I did not feel like I did a good job. I did not feel like I represented my seat well. And it's sat in my head ever since then that I would never, under any circumstance, unless like it was beyond my control, do that again. It just was a terrible way to contribute, so.
I did that from Florida one year, one meeting last year. And I agree with Deputy Mayor Deschamps. You don't feel like you're in the meeting.
no.
It's fine.
I think all you were doing though was auditing at that point. You weren't counted towards quorum, you were just
No,
listening.
and I wasn't, but I was involved in discussions
Yeah.
and comments and that type of thing. And frankly, it was a waste of time,
Yeah.
from my point of view.
Okay, so, now I'm gonna have to resolve this discussion. Does the clerk, here's the issue, does the clerk bring forward a bylaw which recognizes and authorizes electronic participation? The answer is either yes or no. Or I know you're gonna say yes, but with qualifications. So the clerk has given you some qualifications here. So maybe what I'll say is, it's this way. Does the clerk bring forward a bylaw that permits electronic participation with qualifications, or does she not? Yes, she does, or no, she doesn't? Yes with qualifications, or no, not at all? Is the question clear? Okay, I'm gonna call the question. I'm gonna ask each one to declare. Does the clerk bring forward a bylaw which permits electronic participation with qualifications? Yes, or does she not? No. Mr. Bradley?
No.
Councillor Hunter?
No,
No.
yes,
Yes.
And I'm a no.
okay. That's our democratic system.
Well, it's never done until it's done. It's But I think we should thank the clerk for her briefing note and for the work that she's done on the issue. And I'm moving on. And the next one is credit card policy update. Additional information, and, 7J. And,
Just give us a moment to get to that.
yes, I
This
need,
procedural bylaw is extremely long.
yes, I'm working my way through it.
91,
Not anymore.
91.
91 of 112. And I have just point of information to bring forward here, and that is, and the reason I'm bringing it forward is because we've been provided with three options here. When the Port Management Committee made the recommendation to add 2 credit cards with a $5,000 limit, I don't think we were mindful as a member of the Port Management Committee, that only the CAO and the Port General Manager had $5,000 limits, and all the rest were at $3,500. So I spoke to Mr. Daly to see whether a $3,500 limit would meet the needs of the operations manager and the office manager. And a $3,500 limit will be sufficient for those two as well. So I just bring that forward so that option one satisfies the request or the needs of the port. So now we have a recommendation in front of us, and you know that option one is satisfactory to the port. So, discussion, further discussion, if any?
On that option, the general manager is at 5,000,
Yes, yeah.
and the other two
Yeah.
people are at 35, yes.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, how are the cards used? Just kind of, for my own edification.
Mostly for stuff that needs immediate payment, a lot of
So
places.
like hotel, you go to a conference, you gotta pay a hotel bill.
Or you're buying something over the phone.
Or, okay,
We don't have an account open.
yeah,
Yeah, we don't have an account open, that's another good
We just
example.
pay it.
yeah.
One
Okay,
check.
so let's take an example, just for the approval process, so I understand it a little bit better. The mayor and the deputy mayor attend a conference, and they have a hotel bill, and they have a couple of dinner bills maybe, and at the dinner, they may have, guests and so on, and so they're gonna pay for the guests maybe, possibly. What's the approval process for those expenses?
Well, if you're talking about elected officials, I refuse to hold a township card. So my expenses go on my own card, and I claim them on my expense account. Submit my invoices and my bills with my expense account, and I get reimbursed that manner.
So how would you see it if the township was gonna be paying?
Well, that would mean that the township would have to issue me a card. I don't want a card.
No, I understand that, but it's a theoretical question, I guess, or hypothetical. So a supervisor and a subordinate, and let's say the subordinate picks up the dinner bill. Does this guy approve that dinner, that expense? Or does it jump to the next one?
Oh, I see. Oh, I don't know how that works.
At the,
No, through the chair.
Like it in
I think using the example of the dinner bill is not really the intent of why those credit cards are used. A lot of courses now, for registration, they like the use of credit cards, and there's a number of those features. But with respect to the credit cards, like the receipts are kept, tracked, initialed, and go through the accounts payable process. So it would probably see about 4 or 5 sets of eyes
Yeah.
by the time it's approved.
And going back to your point, that would mean something like, the office, the operations manager and the port general manager are out for dinner, and the operations manager picks up the tab.
He's
On
approving
his
his
card.
boss, the boss is approving his own expenses, is what I'm getting at.
No, his expenses rise up to the port management committee. The port management committee signs off on his expenses, and they approve the disbursement sheet when they approve the disbursement sheet.
Good.
And then after the disbursement sheet is approved, I sign the checks.
So if I may, on page 95, it sort of indicates responsibilities. So like, for instance, like for my credit card, the mayor shall review and approves the monthly credit card statement of the CAO. So that, like, there's checks and balances there.
Good, thank you.
Okay, further discussion? Looking for further discussion? And,
Make a motion of option one there, Mr. Mayor.
okay, so, that's what's embedded in the recommendation at the present time. Committee recommends that council amend Schedule A of the credit card policy to update the policy using option 1 to add the Port of Johnstown operations manager and the office manager's position and assign a credit limit of $3,500 to each card. Looking for a mover and a second.
I'll move it.
Okay, I have Councillor Dillabaugh moving, I have Councillor Hunter seconding. Further discussion, if any? Hearing none. Those in favor? Motion is carried. And so now, I'm moving on to Reserve and Reserve Funds Policy Update K. And so for the treasurer, what is specifically being asked here? Recommends that council direct staff to update the reserve fund portion of the Reserve and Reserve Fund policy with committee recommendations that bring the updated draft policy back to committee for final review at the next, in November. So the draft is here in front of us, is it not?
The original draft is there. We've, at the previous Min Finance, the council reviewed, or committee reviewed the reserve portion only, and those edits have been documented by staff. We're asking committee to look at the reserve fund portion and provide us some direction with respect to the lower limit, the upper limit, and the annual contribution.
Okay, so if I'm going to go directly to the meat of what we're being asked, what page do I need to go to?
I have a different mechanism for looking at it, so.
107, yes, that's what I thought.
It's a
Okay, so I'm
chart.
on 107, and 107 starts talking about the industrial park land, account number 983813. And so we have this spreadsheet in front of us here, a large,
You got the large spreadsheet?
yeah, the large size. Everybody got the large size in front of them?
Oh. That's what.
Okay, so that, we're gonna be working from this sheet. And so we're working from this sheet, and I'm just gonna go through them, there's only a few. I'm just gonna go through them one at a time and ask you to make a comment. So, for example, I'm just gonna go very quickly. The industrial park investment is an HSI, high interest savings account. The balance on December the 31st was $2,100,000. And as you can see from the 5-year analysis chart up at the top, the 5-year average of that account is around $2,032,000. The balance on December of 2018 was $2 million. And the balance on December of 31st of 2019 was $2,118,000. We're projecting an interest of $50,000 a year into that account, and projected balance at the end of this year will be $2,168,000. The question is, a draft policy for the lower limit. Should there be an amount lower than which we do not want to go? That's the first question. And then the other question is, what's the upper limit? And of course, that's marked non-applicable because we can let it go as high as we want.
Yes.
So should there be a lower limit, lower than which we would not draw that investment?
What do we use it for?
Strictly for,
Punching a road through or something like that?
no, it's, again, that's, okay, what do we use it for? If you go down to industrial park land, that's the same basic account, if I understand it correctly. It's just that we've taken from our industrial park land fund, which would be $2,118,000 plus the 504. We've taken the $2 million and put it into an HSI account. And the industrial park land we've traditionally used in the past to purchase land for industrial purposes. And then when we sell that land, the money goes back into this same account, same fund. Now, what will we use it for? In my mayor's report, I'm gonna talk about a possible use of a large portion of that money.
So we have plans, in other words, it's
Yes.
not just sitting there with, we don't have a plan.
No. So, the first comes down to, or, you know, considering that the industrial park HSI account and the industrial park land account is basically the same money, just, invested differently.
Yep.
I think we don't need to look at a lower limit on the HSI, you know, the HISA. The question is, how low would we want that total amount to go? Or would we even put a lower amount on it if we had, for example, a need to invest $2.5 million, would we invest the whole thing at once? We would. And so then, when we sold that land, the draft policy says that we would contribute 75% of the proceeds from the land sales back. And I think that it should be 100% of the proceeds to go back. Do we get a nodding of heads on that?
That's I would agree with that.
So would I.
Depends.
Go ahead.
Might have a,
So if you make a big profit,
if you made a big profit on it, and you have 2 million, if you bought $2 million worth of land, where I'm assuming that we're probably figuring we bought 2 million, we're gonna double on sales, we're not gonna buy it and sell it for what we bought it for. So I would say we're making a profit, there should be something, you're basically saying probably 25% of the profit you're moving over to help out the township.
Except for one thing, you know, we buy at $1 million, and we sell for $1.2 million. We've generally added value in between there, somehow, to get our $1.2 million. We've rezoned it, we've added some value to it in some way, shape, or form. We've maybe added a road to it. So, when you consider it, I mean, I don't think we make a net profit. I think basically what we've basically done in the past is recovered our total investment. The purchase of the land was just one part of that investment. The sale of it recaptures, makes us totally whole. That's why, you know, I sort of lean towards putting 100% of it back and preparing ourselves for the next, quote, the next big thing. So I'm not getting, am I getting Councillor Hunter's sort of not?
I can see where you're coming from, but also, like, I think it's regardless of what we put there, the council today is gonna make the decision what they want. This is a hypothetical thing, we're saying we're putting 100% back in the council today. They may sell something for $3 million of land and decide that at that point that they're gonna put the $3 million down, but the next day they're gonna draw $500,000 out to pay for something else. So I don't see a problem with putting it all back in, but it's just that if there is a profit made, big profit made on someplace along the way, the township as a whole needs to gain a little bit on it. You know, we gain the taxes and investment, we're gaining, that's where we're trying to gain the township.
Right. Okay, so I gotta, did you want in here, Mr. CO?
Just wanted to clarify, Mr. Chair, that 75% of the proceeds from land sales for the industrial park land, and the other 25% typically goes into the industrial park wastewater.
Oh, it does?
It does. And
Oh, yes, I see that down below there.
Yeah, so just, you probably want to be aware of that before,
Oh, okay.
you may or may not want to go 100% into that.
Oh, okay, well,
Keep the 75, you mean?
okay, I didn't notice that, thanks for bringing that to our attention. Okay, so let's just leave it at 75% then. Okay, so now I'm at raw water supply system, and again, the raw water supply system had a balance in it, the fund had a balance of $401,000 on December the 31st. You can see where the history of it above there, and it's been going up steadily, which is our intent, because when we send the bill to Greenfield, we build into their operating annual amount that we collect from them, we build in $20,000 every single year to go into that fund. That's designed to replace that system at some point, or make it larger, whatever. And we also estimate that it'll produce about $10,000 in interest, and then its balance at the end of the year will be $431,000. Now, the 2020 budget operating expenses coming out of there, no, it's not, they don't come out. The operating expenses to run that system are $103,000 a year. Now, the draft policy, the lower limit is expected to be 25% of the total operating expenses. So in other words, the lower limit, it would never go below 25,000, and the upper limit is the estimated replacement cost of the system over the amortized period. So anybody have any problems with that? Otherwise, it'll stand. Okay, and the minimal annual contribution is 20. Okay, moving on, that's a good one. Industrial park wastewater, it's at 20, the fund is at $24,896,000 at the end of 2019. We're budgeting to transfer in $2,460, projected interest of $700. Budgeted to transfer out is $1,592. Maybe the treasurer can tell us what that was for.
So what I'm gonna back up to the budgeted transfer in, the 2460 is a capital levy. So that is billed and then put into the reserve. The 1592 is actually the deficit that particular system has incurred or is budgeted to incur in 2020, if all the expenditures come in at the same amount.
Okay.
So I mean, if we end up with a slightly less Prescott bill to Prescott for the capacity, then we would not take it of that. There's only 2 or 3 budget lines in the expense side of that, and that's Prescott and the insurance. So it hedges on how much flow and capacity we have to purchase from Prescott, but the budget is based on, you know, a projected amount that Prescott provided us in the budget, in their budget.
Right.
So it depends on what our flow rates are in capacity.
Okay.
So it is
And our draft policy for the lower limit is 25% of the operating cost, which is $16,000. And again, the upper limit is the estimated replacement cost over the amortized period. And we also put into that fund 25% of the proceeds from land sales. So any problems there? Otherwise, we're gonna leave that policy the way it is. Okay, it's staying. Industrial park water, the balance in the fund is 88 at the end of December. We're budgeting to transfer in 19. We're projecting interest of 2,400. We're projecting a balance at the end of the year of 109. And the draft policy again is 25% of the operating cost, which is about $40,000 that we would budget to transfer in. And the high end of it would be the estimated replacement cost. Again, any questions?
I'm uncomfortable with that fund in the sense that we don't have control over what happens vis-a-vis our neighbor, okay, and who supplies the water. And so I don't know if the best approach would be to look at try to develop a long-term plan for our township that kind of gives us a little bit more of a comfort level to, you know, deal with any possible eruptions that occur from our neighbor's water supply system. I mean, you know, what if they start providing water to Augusta and, you know, things, we just don't know what their plans are. You almost need a joint commission in some way to sit down and, I know it doesn't work out too well, but, you know, talk about that issue because we're vulnerable there.
Yes, that's right, we're vulnerable insofar as we're only as good as the agreement that we have.
Yeah, which was thrown out when we did challenge it the last time we went to arbitration on it. And we didn't get a satisfactory solution in our favor, so.
Okay, and all this is centering around what should the upper limit be?
Yes.
And maybe the upper limit should be, you know, to purchase enough money to build a plant of our own.
Oh, yeah, but you're looking, what, $10 million?
No, more like 14 or 15.
Yeah.
So, right now, it's estimated replacement cost of the system over the amortized period. The system, as it is right now, is just the pipe in the ground from Boundary Street to the end of the line, right?
Yeah.
So, if you think we should be changing that to something like $5 million or something like that, I think that would be a reasonable.
Yeah, I think from a in the long-term view, you know, you're not gonna do it.
Well, what's number? Give me a number.
Well.
If we're gonna change the policy, let's
Yeah,
put on a number.
If we had to finance a plant of our own, we would I hope desirably, at least, we would wanna have some funding in which we could apply ourselves to. Wouldn't borrow the whole thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and if you say 15 million, I thought it was maybe closer to 10, so I was thinking of numbers like 3.5, 4 million, but if it's 15, maybe 5 is a better number.
Third.
Yeah.
And you know, that's what I always used to work on in business, was I wanted to have a third ready.
Yeah. Well, it also helps you negotiate too, in terms of, you know, your term and your interest and everything else.
Okay, would anybody be averse to the draft policy would be changed to the upper limit would be 5 million? And we would try to raise that fund up to 5 million over a period of time. That would be our long-term plan.
Well, I don't have the answers to all that, but I'd like to hear some commentary from the
Well, that's what I'm trying to get.
elected members.
Need some comment?
I don't know if they don't feel vulnerable, like I feel vulnerable, the way the system's set up right now.
5 million wouldn't be too much, I wouldn't think to be putting there. What do they figure the amortization rate of replacing the line is? It was $1 million when we put it in back in 1980, so.
So again, 5 million would be just about right.
That's what I'm thinking, like,
Probably only just the pipes.
Just the pipes.
What's that now?
I said it's probably only just the pipes, I would have to look at the specific number, but
Yeah.
I was trying to get away from using a specific number, because replacement value today is one value, and if we have to replace it in 20 years, the replacement
It's
value
another
could be
value.
quite completely different. So I was using wording, and I know that it's not palatable, very palatable at the table, but the policy is a policy that lasts for longer than just a year or two, or even 4 or 5. It's a policy that, you know, I mean, we can revise it as we go along and.
But why can't we do
determine, but-
both? Why can't we say estimated replacement cost of the system over the amortized period, but a minimum of 5 million?
You certainly can put any value you want in the policy.
Let's put both in.
If I may, I'm kind of reading that it's more of where the actual current balance of that reserve is the vulnerable area
That's what I'm worried about.
that you're indicating. So it might be more useful to try to look at putting in a minimum annual contribution to start to build up that reserve towards that.
We've been trying to build the
Yeah.
contribution up, but we probably aren't even replacing, like, we're not at a minimum of what it actually amortizes or depreciates. So our annual amortization in that system is about 30, almost closer to 30,000.
Okay, so you're
So
saying that the
we probably
budgeted
need-
transfer in,
Probably need to be adding a better value of a transfer into that system,
yeah, right now it's,
19.
19, but, okay, so that's interest plus something.
Mhm.
Could
Okay,
we up the
so,
lower limit with our operating to 50%? That would give us $80,000 a year?
With your-
I'm sorry?
So through the chair, just to clarify, that
It's the
25%, that lower limit of 25% is the case where you don't want
Go under.
that reserve balance to go down any lower than that.
No, I'm saying up it, like to 50%, not 25%.
no, but that doesn't get you any
That
places.
doesn't, that
I think
doesn't advance it, because we're talking the lower limit.
Yeah, because I think what you wanna do is you wanna build up that reserve fund faster than what it's growing right now.
Yeah.
Yes,
So what you really need to do is put your minimum annual contribution, you have nothing there, and it looks like the annual amortization is about 27,000, as the treasurer said. So if you wanna start to build up that reserve, then you put in an annual contribution of 30,000. That's what we put in the budget, and then you can decide whether you want to, from, you know, if it's palatable from a council standpoint to raise the water rates to achieve that, you know, going into the reserve fund.
okay, so what is the minimum contribution then?
So, yeah.
What should the minimum contribution be? Because we can't put it on that same column, we have to put it someplace else.
That's right.
So minimum contribution of, and we have to set our rate to get that amount.
Yes, it would have, yes.
All right, so we should be setting the rate to get about 30 grand a year, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so minimum contribution 30 grand. And then the estimated replacement, or the upper limit, the lower limit would stay the same at about 40.
Mhm.
And the estimated the upper limit would be estimated replacement cost of the system over the amortized period with a minimum of,
5 million?
with a goal of 5 million. Okay, all right, now moving on to Johnstown water wells. And the balance in that fund is 25,000. We put 5,000 in this year. We're hoping to make 500 in interest. We're budgeting to transfer out 9,000. Why are we transferring 9 out?
In this budget, there was a potential to look at some wells, to do a well or two and get people off. So we were looking at using some of that money to take one of the systems off of the, maintenance plan.
Right, so how many systems, how many homes do we have on the maintenance plan?
6 or 7? 6.
6, I believe.
6 homes on the maintenance plan where we pay all the water costs, right?
We pay maintenance on
Maintenance costs,
Yeah,
yes.
so far, I think we've drilled either 2 or 3 wells and gotten those 2 or 3 off the system.
I believe 2 wells.
Okay, so the idea of this fund is to try to get enough money in there to get all those other customers off the system, off the maintenance system. Now, we've committed ourselves to putting in 5,000 a year. So the question is, what is the lower limit of the fund? Somebody says that it's about 4,000. And what is the estimated upper limit? It's the estimated cost to replace all the systems. Anybody have a problem with that? That's the objective of that fund. Okay? No objections. So whether we actually drill 1 well this year or 2 wells next year, you know, but again, the wells are gonna come in at probably around $9,000-10,000 each
10 each, yeah.
on the basis of what we've already done. And the next question is, do we have a candidate, a homeowner that's prepared to let us drill a well on their property and sign off on our obligations? Okay, I'm at Cardinal Hydro, it's at 119, 27 coming in this year, projected interest of about 3. Well, that transfer in, that's the dividend, right?
Dividend and quarterly interest.
Dividend and the quarterly interest. And by the way, Rito St. Lawrence has not held their annual general meeting, which is generally held in August. They're postponing it and postponing it and postponing it. And the board at the present time is of a mind not to declare a dividend this year. So we may not see anything coming this year in the form of a dividend. They're sort of hedging their bets as more time goes by and they see how 2019 is, they see how 2020 is behaving. Remember, the dividend that that we would collect this year would be from 2019. Right, so they just are not declaring a 2019 dividend at this point, but they're not at the annual general meeting yet. So, the draft lower limit, if there is none, that's an X, and the upper limit is just, there's nothing there. And the annual dividend and quarterly interest payments is just a note. That's what goes into this fund. So now I'm going to dispensable wastewater. 280,000 at the end of December. Coming in, we've budgeted not to put anything in. Projected interest of about 8,500. We're budgeted to transfer out 14,000. Now, what was the reason for the 14,000? I forget.
Well, it would be capital, it'd probably be to cover capital costs, because our operating costs are covered by revenues, but our capital was budgeted at 28,000.
So that'd be half their capital?
It'd be half the capital.
Okay, and so at the end of the year, they're projected to be at 272, and they're budgeting, their annual budget is 132, so 25% of their annual budget is 33. Estimated replacement cost, so the lower limit should be 33, everybody agree with that? And the upper limit is the estimated replacement cost.
Yeah.
All right? Cardinal wastewater, same kind of an argument all the way across. Any discussion there? Hearing none, I'm gonna leave it the way it is. Cardinal water, same discussion there, except remember, Cardinal water and Cardinal wastewater, we've got about 600 and 200, we've got about 800,000 in those two accounts. And that's gonna be pretty much gone when we do phase one, is it not? Or do we have an estimate for phase one?
Through the chair, we don't have a firm estimate for phase one yet.
Okay, all right. But that's earmarked for that, right?
Yes.
All right, so now the question is how low would you draw that fund, Cardinal Water? And the number we have here is that we wouldn't put it below 101,000. And the estimated high spot would be the estimated cost of replacing the system, which would be X plus Y. And then some.
I was gonna say, and then some.
Plus.
And then the last one is the dedicated capital reserve fund, which it looks like we've just established it, have we?
Yeah, that's the newest fund we just established this year with the money that the port provided the township as an increase to their admin.
Okay, and we're gonna add that each year to that fund?
Yeah, each year the annual increase from the prior year will go in to that fund.
Okay,
We've not really identified, we've just said it's dedicated for capital, but we haven't, there's no real necessity to determine upper or lower limits
right, so
specifically
just
on
leave it
that.
the way it is?
It's too low at this point to really make any, The
Right.
the three ones down below under the subtotal
Yep.
are all obligatory funds, meaning that unfortunately council doesn't have a whole lot to say other than the modernization. OSIF is formula-based funding that, we have to specifically spend it on certain things, and you're only allowed to maintain a balance of 5 years of funding, same as gas tax. So the only one is the modernization that, but I didn't put any parameters around that. We haven't really seen that the province has provided us much direction with respect to the modernization fund in terms of you know, how we use it or what.
Again, upper and lower limits don't apply.
No, not really.
No, we've had a discussion about that already, so
Yeah.
I think I think we've got enough direction here to finalize this. Okay, so I'm moving on. That was that one. And so I'm at item 8, which is council inquiries or notices of motion. And does anybody have anything to bring forward there?
I have one, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, to the CEO, I had the Johnstown Motel, I think if we remember about tree cutting around that transformer. It hasn't been done, he's getting really worried, the trees are growing bigger, obviously, and the wind last week scared him. So I think it was hydro, we're supposed to get hydro. I think we should do maybe a follow-up, if we could, just get them down there to do something. Roger called me Wednesday, very concerned in that wind. If we could, please.
Any other councillors have
No.
inquiries or notices of motion to bring forward here? Nobody else? Okay, I'm going quickly to the mayor's report, just a couple of things. So, the very first thing, I would like all the councillors to write this down. It's just 2 words. The Wellings, W-E-L-L-I-N-G-S. W-E-L-L-I-N-G-S, and it's a company that builds and operates rental apartments for teeny tiny homes. I just want you to do some due diligence on it. They've asked to speak to me. There may be something come from it. I just want you to be familiar with what they do.
They're all over the place, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, they are. Quite a large company, well-funded. The second thing I want to talk to you about, just quickly.
Before we move on, Mr. Mayor, I sent you an email about teeny tiny homes. And I think it was basically a story of the use and the interest that has been actually occurred in a development, and it took place in Australia. So I don't know if you
Yeah, I did.
had a chance to read it, but it'd be very popular apparently.
And it's becoming even more popular here.
Yeah.
Yeah, because these are 800, 900,000 square feet, and they're selling at 120, 130, something like that.
The pictures in that article were quite impressive, I thought.
And the Wellings, they have as well, one of their projects is all teeny tiny homes.
They have a website?
Yeah, just go to the Wellings.
Okay.
All right, the last thing I want to talk to you just quickly. Now, Mr. Grant had a teleconference, I didn't attend, last week with Infrastructure Ontario. And I didn't attend because I thought it was operational, and I wanted the lawyers to have their say. The purpose of the teleconference, and Leroy was on the call as well, Mr. Grant?
That is correct.
Our lawyer from Alton Alt. So the purpose of that call was so Infrastructure Ontario would review with Mr. Grant and our lawyer their standard template for purchasing property from Infrastructure Ontario. They have a standard template that they use. They wanted to see whether we would live with that template or whether we had things that we found unpalatable. I don't know how much flexibility they have, Mr. Grant, let's just talk to that. But I got the impression that they prefer to use their template as it is. Would you talk to just that point?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, they would, certain sections of that agreement, there is basically no flexibility. There are certain sections where they have some limited flexibility. So realistically, having a quick walkthrough of the agreement, we have basically the remainder of the month to put forward some of our questions, concerns, and adjustments with respect to that for IO consideration.
All right, now, one of the things that they're not flexible about, as I understand it, and I wasn't part of that call, but I've been on several calls with them, is that if we buy a property from them, and this is all going someplace, if we buy a property from them for $1 million and sell it for $1.5 million, we're obligated to pay that $500,000 back to them. Now, if we buy for $1 million and we spend $200,000 improving the property some way, and we sell it for $1.5 million, then we're only obligated to pay them back the $300,000. Do you see what I'm getting at? In other words, they do not want us making net zero, net gain on our investment. And they will, apparently, according to them, the guys that were on the previous calls, they will audit that very carefully. Now, where is this going? The purpose of the call, as I've discussed it with Mr. Grant, was to make sure that we were familiar with their template and how they do business. The question I asked to Mr. Grant was, are they preparing us so that we're ready to buy land from them for the Ontario Job Site Challenge, if we're selected? Mr. Grant's response to me, and I'm going to let him talk to this, our consultants, Novatech, we have nominated 2,000 acres into the Job Site Challenge. We know from the initial work that Novatech has done that we overreached in the acreage, but we did that with a purpose because we didn't know anything about what the land looked like. Novatech has done an awful lot of work since we've submitted our nomination, and they're trying to get the footprint that we would need to service a manufacturing plant down to around the 700 or 800 acreage range. Because it's pretty clear from our discussions with Infrastructure Ontario that they're going to want us to buy that land and own it and then resell it on the international market if the process finds us a buyer. Now, what will we have to do in the interim period of time? There's a whole bunch of things we're going to have to do. Rezoning, servicing, etc., etc., etc. But they make it very clear to us that they're in no position to do any of the upgrading that would need to be done to make that land investment ready. We would have to be the ones to do that. So you were asking earlier about our industrial land fund. That's where the money would come from to buy 700 or 800 or 1,000 acres of land from Infrastructure Ontario if we win the Ontario Job Site Challenge.
How much of the 2,000 is owned by them?
All of it. It's,
So if we drop it to 800 acres, does that weaken our position?
no, we're not going to do that right now.
You mean we wait till we get awarded and then say, oh, wait, by the way.
No. There's discussions going on at much higher levels here that we're not even aware of. We have to be aware of the fact that Infrastructure Ontario is talking to the Job Site Challenge. They have an oar in that camp. We have to be aware of that. We're not, we have to know that these things are happening. We also have to be aware of the fact that, there's 18 applications. If 3 of those 18 applications all have 1,000 acres, sewer and water, electrical, internet, the whole enchilada, that we're not going to win. Plain and simple. But we also have to be aware of the fact that we can make all of those things available given a period of time. We can handle all the zoning that's required through a ministerial zoning order, but we can't do sewer and water with a ministerial zoning order. That's boots on the ground and dollars and cents.
But
So-
we're not getting, like, we take the risk.
Well,
They have the land, they give us the land,
they sell us the land.
they sell us the land, and then we do whatever we have to do, zone and blah, blah, blah. And then offer it on the international market. So we're taking the risk, the business risk of maybe not selling that land.
That's correct.
So we have to be very careful, in my view, we'd have to be very careful about jumping into the water without knowing whether our swim trunks are up or down or whatever, okay?
There's no question about that. You've got that analyzed exactly right. Remembering, of course, that these three sites are going to be marketed internationally as immediately investment ready. Okay?
By
That's
the Ontario government.
by the Ontario government, yeah.
Yeah, it's just that if we, whatever, like, I don't have the numbers, but if we buy the land from them for $5 million, and then we have to put in our
Another
own
million.
effort, and that's another
Yep,
2 million or 3 million or whatever, and then we go out and try to sell it, our price has to compete with the other three that
Yeah.
are available, right?
yeah.
So-
But their price will be based on raw land value. Okay, so I don't wanna belabor this point because, you know, our contact with Ontario Job Site Challenge right now is, I can't get them to return the calls. We know roughly that they're evaluating the 18 proposals. They're evaluating 6 at a time on 2-week basis. They pull their team together to evaluate 6 and then they move on to their next 6. We don't know where we stand and we probably won't right until the end. But that's that. Last thing, capital budget items. Now, Mr. CEO, was the staff gonna bring forward a list of capital budget items that they're proposing for next year? And when would we be seeing that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the treasurer is preparing for her typical November pre-budget or kickoff to the 2021 budget at the November Admin and Finance. So staff is working at developing that 2021 capital, because I think that'll be the first area that we would suggest to look at.
Okay, so I'm gonna get in here right now too, because, you know, last year at this point, I asked all of the counselors, you've been sitting at the table for a year, you've been sitting here at the table now for 2 years. So what are your specific priorities that you would like to see this year's budget address? So if anybody has a mind, they wanna send, well, I think maybe do it a different way. At the November Finance Committee meeting, the Admin Finance Committee meeting, I'm just gonna ask each of you to tell me, what are your 2 basic priorities? Last year I asked for 3. We don't have money for 3 this year. So just, you only get 2. So, I just,
Next year, we
I was just gonna say maybe 1.
I mean, and I'm just doing this for 2 reasons. Number one, I wanna hear what your priorities are, what you think the township needs to move ahead, and also staff needs to hear where the politicians are coming from. So let's do it out in the open, and let's spend the time between now and next and Finance Committee meeting, putting our thoughts in order and getting ourselves organized for that meeting. Okay, so that's the mayor's report. I'm moving fast because I want to get to the in-camera session. There's no question period because there's nobody here to ask questions.
Can I ask a question?
Sure, you can ask a question.
I have 2 questions, I'll try to make them quick. Can you give us a 30-second update on BBL?
Yes, well, the 30-second update goes something like this. Be careful here.
That was quick.
Nothing to report.
Actually,
Okay, next question.
Some of the equipment has arrived, and is on site at the location. Other pieces of equipment that they say they need have still not arrived. And that's basically where things sit at the present time.
Second question, and this is through the chair to the treasurer. Do you have yet any idea, or maybe have dates, when MPAC will pass over to you some of the specific information that we need, or you need, and comment, like maybe you know when they're gonna issue their assessment, final assessment?
Right. Yeah, I can certainly answer that. I was on a webinar and I'm on another one next week, but the roll itself will return, I'll get a final copy on the 15th of December.
Right.
They cut off on the 4th for anything in terms of changes, subs or omits or whatever before the 4th of December. So they are really pushing to get as much of the assessment in that they can before the December 4th deadline. Unfortunately, we're only gonna see growth because the 2020 as is will be the 21 roll return. So however, whatever, there is no phase in because there's no reevaluation.
Oh, they're not doing a reevaluation?
No, they're going to, and they have not given us at this point a date that they'll start that process for a reevaluation for another 4-year cycle.
Oh, so we're not going to a new base year?
No.
Oh, that's,
So-
oh,
So our growth is the only thing that's
Right.
really gonna be impacted, and actually the growth is not at this point, although I got a sup run today, which was mostly commercial and industrial, which was better.
yeah,
It's actually increased it, but probably only about maybe $50,000 more in revenue at the same tax rate.
oh, okay.
So there's not a lot of extra money.
Okay. Okay, your questions? All right, so now we're going into the closed session, and I need a mover and a seconder to go into the closed session. You wanna have the motion?
I just got a adjournment.
Time on it.
9:17, yeah.
And myself, second by Deputy Mayor Disha, committee proceed into closed session 9:17 PM in order to address matters pertaining to personal matters by an identified individual, including municipal or local board employees, specifically recreation. Two, proposed or pending acquisition or disposal of land by the municipal or local board, specifically minutes of closed session dated September 14th, 2020. Thank you, sir.
Okay, so the minutes of, are those in favor?
Aye.
Motion is carried.
Second by Deputy Mayor Disha, closed meeting does now adjourn and the open meeting committee does now resume at 9:39 PM.
Those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Motion is carried. And I'm just going to report out from the closed session. The committee reviewed the minutes of the closed session dated September the 14th, and Councillor Cameron will bring a motion forward.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Dillabaugh that Committee of the Whole receives and approves the closed session minutes dated September 14th, 2020.
Thank you very much. Those in favor?
Aye.
Motion is carried. And reporting further from the closed session, the closed session received a report from the CAO regarding a personal matter about an identifiable individual. And we'll take his report under advisement and he will act accordingly. That ends the reporting from the closed session. And now the chair is looking for the motion to adjourn the council meeting, the committee meeting.
I have that, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor John Hunter, that committee of the whole is now adjourned at 9:40 PM.
Thank you very much. Those in favor?
Aye.
Motion is carried. Thank you.